What up, my sippers and stoners? It's MeannaDK checking in once again. And
it's just me and my disciples. Talking to God while we smoke dope. We keep the lighter in our circle.
What's going on, y'all? It's MeannaDK checking in once again. And I am here with the second installment. I don't know if you're calling it installment or whatever, but here for the second part of our EQ discussion. And I'm gonna tag just a couple of people who I know are interested in the subject. And that's about it. I'm not gonna tag a whole lot of people. A whole lot of people don't even need to be tagged. Okay. How you doing, Sean? How are you? You good? Is this too bright? Hold on. I think right there is the money shot. Cool. Okay, so we are talking about emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, however you want to look at it. And today I am going to briefly recap what we touched on last week. I'm pretty good. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate you. I have been looking forward to bringing you the second part of this EQ series because when I tell you I am learning so much, I am learning so much. I am learning about myself. I am able to reflect as I move through this and understand why I did certain things the way I did them, how other people do things the way they do them. And I think I'm also understanding how my work life worked out, if that makes sense, okay? So I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time prolonging things. I am going to throw in a shameless plug for my YouTube page, MeannaDK. Go ahead and look for that on YouTube, and This Morning's Cup on Instagram. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out the way, let's go ahead and start. Let's recap by talking about what is EQ. What is emotional quotient? What is this when you hear people talk about, oh my God, like she has a high EQ? Not IQ, EQ. Have you ever heard of EQ? Well, if you haven't and you didn't catch the live from last week, then I'll recap. We talked last week about what emotional quotient is. EQ is the ability to understand your own emotions, the emotions of others, and the ability to control and or manage your emotions and or relationships. We talking about EQ. What's up, Othello? How you doing, Antoinette? Who else was that jumped in? Kelly, what's up? We're talking about emotional quotient. This is a continuation from where we were last week. Okay, so just some advantages that I mentioned last week about EQ and why emotional intelligence is so important. Well, doing some research, I figured out that if you compare both the stars of any corporation, church, family, business, what's up, sis? What you'll find is that the number one factor of all those successes are high EQs. Okay? And I'm going to break it down even further. The number one factor in a successful business ownership, the number one successful the number one reason for a successful entrepreneur, a successful business owner, a successful CEO, no matter who you are, the number one contributing factor to that success is your emotional intelligence level or your emotional quotient. And this goes for any business in any place in the world, any state, any city, it doesn't matter. Your EQ will determine your level of success, and I'm going to explain why, okay? Okay. when you think about it, because we talk about IQs a lot because that determines a person's intellect, right? So we think that a person with a high IQ is ultimately going to be successful, but it's not true. Once a person reaches like a high IQ genius, past genius level, anything that's like, what's this say, 150 or above in their IQ, they actually become counterproductive. And that's not discouraging anybody from having a high IQ. I'm just trying to break down how IQ and EQ have nothing to do with one another. Just because a person is highly intelligent, it does not mean that they're going to have a high emotional quotient. That's why you can see geniuses out there and they're on the street. They're geniuses, but their EQ is off. You understand what I'm saying? This may not make sense, but I promise you, if you stay with me, it's going to make sense, okay? Okay. Also, let me go ahead and put this on record. This is the research that has been done since EQ has been being discussed, which has been over 30 years now, okay? They have tested over 500,000 people in every single part of the world to come up with this particular... You understand? Right. Kanye West, Clifford, Tip Harris, geniuses. Very, very low emotional quotient, okay? So this study is super factual, super accurate, and it's backed up by thousands of books and studies about EQ, okay? So if you think that I'm lying, if you think that I'm the know-it-all who thinks she know everything, you definitely could research this on your own and come to the same conclusions. I'm just trying to make sure that we can all have a great discussion and learn some things. So if the stuff that I'm saying you feel like does not apply to you at all, that's awesome. I get it. You are the one out of everybody, and that's what's up. Right? But for the rest of us, we are hoping to find ourselves in this information, and we are hoping to see how we can get better with regard to our emotional quotient, okay? Once we hear about the benefits of it. People with high EQs make on average $29,000 more per year in any Fortune 500 company in the country, in the world, actually. So there has to be something to this, okay? Othello says, I think I may lack EQ. My compassion comes with a certain amount of hazing. Okay, that makes sense. Did you take the test? I posted earlier a link to the test. It's a free test that you can take online. You can actually click and go take it right now, although I don't necessarily want you to leave the live. If you want to be able to discuss this more in depth, then we can go ahead and I'm going to say, go ahead, run, take the test, come right back. Okay. Okay. So EQ does not mean that you're automatically going to be an extrovert or sociable. So let's say somebody has a high emotional quotient. Their EQ is off the charts, right? That does not mean that they're going to be extroverts. It doesn't mean that they're going to like to want to be in social situations either. There are plenty of introverts with very, very high EQs. Deciding that you don't want to be around large groups of people and that you don't want to be less necessarily the life of the party does not mean that you lack emotional intelligence. It just means that you're an introvert with high EQ, if that's the case. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so let's move into like the effects of someone with a high emotional quotient. Let me tell you how you can notice someone out of a crowd that has a high EQ. Some of the effects of a high EQ is someone who has high anger management, someone who is very, very good at managing how they react to their anger. Notice, anger management does not mean that a person never gets angry. It doesn't mean that a person can't never be upset. It just means that they know how to channel that anger and what to do with it in a healthy way, not a toxic way, okay? Accountability. People with high emotional quotients tend to be very, very accountable. They tend to not place blame on the other person when something comes around. You ever see somebody that, swear to God, everything is somebody else's fault? You ever see somebody that every time something comes around or a new thing arises, life goes and smacks them in the ass, it's always everybody else's fault? They don't never take no ownership for their part in it. They are always the victim. Chances are their EQ is very, very low, okay? But someone who tends to take accountability for their actions, they tend to have high EQs, okay? People who are honest, people who trust people. You ever seen somebody that all they say in regard to other people is, I don't open up because I don't trust nobody? I got trust issues. I got trust issues. But they've been saying that for 20 years. They've never tried to deal with the things that give them the trust issues. You ever meet somebody who got trust issues when they 25 and then they got trust issues when they 35? So it's like in the last 10 years, you ain't overcame nothing. You just continue to have trust issues and you're going to continue to blame that on other people, huh? Okay, got it. Okay. So people who don't deal with that tend to have higher EQs, okay? Assertiveness and confidence. People with high emotional quotients tend to be assertive and they tend to be confident in their actions. So that's why I say this has nothing to do with like male or female. It has nothing to do with rich or poor. It has nothing to do with none of that shit. Have you ever seen someone who they look like they seem like they should be rich? They're super smart. They got a lot going for themselves, but they always seem to be struggling. Chances are they have a low EQ, right? But you'll see somebody who's like stale, dry as a box of rocks, so you think, but they seem like they might be making it. They might have a higher EQ than the person who seems like they deserve it. You understand what I mean? Because EQ work like that. It don't have no favor of persons. You understand? It don't have no respect of persons. Okay, communication. People with high EQs tend to be great communicators. And that does not mean that they are great orators, okay? Just because a person can talk you in circles, just because a person got a good mouthpiece on them, does not mean that they are effective communicators, right? So an effective communicator is able to not listen to just to respond, but they're able to listen in order to communicate, right? They are able to communicate in their work relationships. They're able to be assertive in their communication. You see how all of these things tie together? They're able to communicate in their intimate relationships. You ever see somebody that can't never open up and can't never be vulnerable to nobody? Sometimes a lot of the times that's men, but sometimes that's women too, okay? We have a problem being vulnerable. We have a problem opening up. Chances are you got a low EQ and you don't know how to communicate effectively, or you choose not to communicate effectively in every situation. Either way, something got to change, right? But people that have exceptionally high and high EQs, they have the ability to communicate, whether in their work relationships, family relationships, friendly relationships, or romantic relationships. Okay? Stress intolerance, right? Hey, Denisha, how you doing? Stress tolerance, not intolerance, I'm sorry. Stress tolerance. A person with a high EQ will know how to manage stressful situations differently than a person with low EQ, right? A person with low EQ, that's a person that's always rattled. They always stressed. There's always something going on. You ever met somebody and they always got some shit going on? Somebody always fucking up the church's money? Like they always got somebody that lied on them? You ever be around somebody that's always got somebody backstabbing them, lying on them? They name always in some mess. They always stressed out, right? They tend to have a low emotional quotient, okay? Okay. Decision making. People think that decision making is just about facts, right? That's not true. I'm here to tell you today that decision making has less to do with facts and more to do with your emotions than you think. People make decisions based on how they feel about the situation. Oftentimes, we are presented with information, we're presented with facts, right? But based on how we feel about those facts, that's how we're going to move, right? So your decision making, even though you think you make great decisions, it's not based in fact. So if you have a low EQ, please understand these decisions is going to come back to bite you in the ass because they're not made from a place of high emotional intelligence. They're made from a place of just, this is what I feel like right now, right? Okay. Flexibility in life. If a person is able to adjust to what life throws at them, there is a high chance that they have a high EQ, okay? If a person, when life happens, just feels like the world is over every time, oh God, my cat died, oh God, they ran over my toe with the car, oh God, I stubbed my baby toe on the end of the bed, life is over. those people tend to have low EQ. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, hold on. So, you want to make sure that you're able to point certain things out when they come up, right? I want you to know that people who have a hard time with presenting things, like there are certain people who would never do a Facebook Live. That's just not their shit. They would never do it, right? That doesn't mean that they have low EQ. They could just be like an introvert. However, a manifestation of low EQ is the inability to be able to speak in front of crowds and present. But that's a really blurry line, because some people are just introverts, right? So therein lies the ability for, well, the possibility for you to really get to know yourself and who you are. What's up, Deacon Matt? What's up, Kia? So, just so that you understand a little bit more, if you could imagine, so imagine like a brain, imagine, post the link. It's in the post that I made about this live earlier today. The link is in that post, okay? Or I'll post it after the live is over, okay? So if you can imagine your brain looking like a staircase, just one level staircase, right? And you know how when you were in high school, you had the stairs that went up and then it went like this and then it went up again, right? Although that was just one level, it just kind of like, it was like, Okay, so imagine your brain is kind of like that. So where so your spinal column runs into the base of the head, right? That's kind of like where your emotions enter the brain. So if you can imagine on that kind of like platform right there, that platform, that's your limbic system, right? And your limbic system is where we feel things. I know we got some nurses or something up in here that can, I'm not a doctor and I'm only trying to give it to you the best way I know how, right? So you got where the thought is entering your mind down here. You got your limbic system where you feel shit, where your emotions are, right here in the middle. And then up here, way the fuck at the top, is where your rational thinking is located. So your thoughts have to make it past this part where you feel shit to get to the area where it actually can process the information in a logical way. So for women, or let me not say that because that's fucked up. For people who are moved by their emotions and have low emotional quotients, they will respond right here at the limbic area where we feel the shit, right? Because that's where we feel it. Other people with higher IQs will wait until the feeling and the thought travels up to the part of our brain where our rational thinking lies. That is the difference between someone with a high EQ and a low EQ. Right? It's not very different, right? We are the same. That's just what it comes down to. We just have different ways of processing things. But a person with a low EQ can definitely become a person with a high EQ. You just got to work at it. And you have to be cognizant of what it is and how it works in your life, right? Okay, so I got a stat that's about to blow y'all mind, okay? Pink Leo, what's up, babe? I got a stat that's about to blow y'all mind, okay? You ready? Only 36% of the people in the country, the world, sorry, it said the world, okay. Only 36% of people in the world are able to identify their emotions as they happen. I'm gonna say it again. 36% of people in the world are able to identify their emotions as they happen, right? Okay. What that means is, on the flip side, 2/3 of the people in the world solely act off of their emotions before they think. 2/3 of the people in the world. So you have 1/3 of the people acting cognitively, right? So they are experiencing whatever they're experiencing, they're feeling it or whatever, but they're reserving their actions for how after they process that which is happening, right? Then there's the other 2/3 of the world who life happens and boom, they react without thinking. They only react on emotion, right? So when I think about how I process information and how I look at the world and how most people will look at me and think that I look at the world weird or different, I'm just starting to understand that there's a difference in emotional quotient. There's not a different, I'm not different. I think differently. That's it. I process things differently. That's all, right? So here's something interesting about EQ. It's definitely not taught in school, right? So when we graduate from school and we become grown, we're taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, intelligence, and that's awesome. The problem is those things they won't help us advance in life. They won't. Otherwise, you wouldn't have A students working for C students right now, right? So it's almost like, because it's not taught in school, it's not gonna be measured based on the grades that you received in school. It's not gonna be based on your IQ or your intelligence quotient, right? It's gonna be based on your EQ. And they weren't, measuring that kind of thing before 1985. So we are, well, no, that's not true. It became popular in 1985, right? So, okay. Good decision. Okay, hold on. So now we become grown and we're in situations where we know how to read. We know the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? But because we don't know how to control our emotions, we can't get anywhere because we continue to lose our cool. We continue to be in places where our emotions cost us things. Sometimes they cost us people. Sometimes they cost us jobs. Sometimes they cost us relationships because we don't know how to deal with them. We don't know how to manage our emotions, nor do we know how to manage our interpersonal relationships. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it becomes hard. You can't advance in life until you learn how to handle those situations, if that makes sense. Anything challenging, the first time something challenging comes along, you acting up. Whether that's acting up, like acting out, acting an ass, or just acting up with like your negative self-talk is going to prevent you from prevailing, if that makes sense. You can cancel out anything going on in your life by speaking negatively. You can have some good shit going on, but if you speak negatively over it, it can cancel out the good shit that's happening. And boom, it's gone. You don't know why. It's because you won't shut up. Anyways, so, we talked about good decision making requiring more than facts, but then there's something else. People with a high emotional quotient, I already talked about how they make $29,000 more per year. But here's the good news. If you have a low EQ, the studies show that for every 1 point of EQ that you gain, it's $1,300 more per year annually. Right? Because you manage your work relationships based on what your EQ is, right? And you can't get ahead with a low EQ. You just can't. Okay. So, triggered events, right, is when something happens in your life that generates a prolonged emotional response to that thing based on your past, which basically translates into something that I posted a while back. Nobody is about to be walking on eggshells around you simply because you can't deal with your own triggers. So when they say delayed or prolonged emotional response, that means that in that area, you are prolonging, you're not getting better. This is a prolonged emotional response. So it's a trigger simply because you refuse to deal with it. But it's no one's responsibility but yours. Right? Instead of feeling like people are responsible for not triggering you, you should be responsible for dealing with your own triggers so that you can have happiness in your life. Right? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to close out with, because I know I gave you guys a lot of information, and since nobody got on that actually dealt with that we don't have enough people putting in the information of what their numbers are, we'll maybe move that to another part, maybe next week. And we'll also get into the 4 pillars of EQ next week. I appreciate y'all for hanging out. I appreciate y'all for joining the live. And until next time, I'm MeannaDK, and I love y'all. I swear I do. This is the ending of my video. Oh, thank y'all for watching.